in which your names appear in the program. That would mean that Professor Sebastian Schultz will start, later Professor Pablo, and then Carolina Romano, and closing our panel, Andres Borges. You have some 15 minutes, around 15 minutes to deliver your lecture, your speech, and then we will follow with questions and answers at the end of the presentations. Professor Sebastian Schultz, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Demetrio. Good morning to everyone. Nice to meet you all. Thanks, Anna Lee and Liu Xiyuan for inviting me to participate in this important conference. I'm very grateful to share the panel, such important people as Fudan, Pablo, Sandra Carolina Romano, and Andres Borges. I apologize for my low level of English. I will try to do my best so that my presentation can be understood. I'm going to share my screen. It's important to begin by making a characterization of how the world is today and what are the conjunctural and structural trends that are going through the international system. Different authors point out that since the end of the 20th century and the beginning of 21st century, we have been going through multiple crises, simultaneous and combined, which give rise to a process of geopolitical reconfiguration of the international order. In the first place, a crisis of hegemony of the United States, which ceases to be the factory of the world. Besides, he's no longer the global sheriff. The United States is no longer in a position to impose conditions or demand obedience to its peripheries. On the other hand, a crisis of unipolarity. The world is currently going through a transition towards relative multipolarity, where new emerging poles are beginning to claim prominence in decision-making at the global level. This process gives rise to a crisis of the Atlanticist hegemony and of the so-called Western axis. The modern Eurocentric and colonial vision of the world has entered into crisis. Meanwhile, the dialogue of people and civilizations of this global south is consolidated. Added to this is a crisis of neoliberal globalization, which is produced large pockets of poverty in the third world and excessive financialization of the economy in the global north, and an environmental crisis to product of a vision focused on the super exploitation of the environment and at the expense of the sustainability of our planet, as a consequence of prioritizing the gain of the private capital over the survival of the human being. The COVID-19 pandemic has deepened this process. The 2020 economic crisis, have mainly affected the G7 powers, while emerging economies, mainly China, will have a faster recovery from 2021. The new information and communication technologies have become a strategic tool for the main powers of the world order. We are currently going through the fourth industrial revolution, that is a true and profound process of transformation of the social relations of production. The fourth industrial revolution is framed in this international context of strong transformation. We are in a moment of strong upheaval on the international scene, where we are defining what will be the characteristic of the international order in the near future. A process such as the development of the 5G network, the ability to store large amount of data, so-called big data, and process it through algorithm, the use of artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, together with robotics, nanotechnology, quantum computing, and biotechnology are central aspects of the ongoing innovation and technological transition process. In economic, okay. Oh, there is a sound. Okay. In economic terms, the technological transition implies qualitatively accelerating and quantitatively increasing of speed of production and circulation of goods. It is a true transformation of the relation of social production. In turn, in financial terms, the fourth industrial revolution can promote the use of digital and electronic currencies as long as they are coordinated and regulated by the states and are not instrument of financial capital to destabilize national currencies. In political terms, we have already seen the consequences of the use of the new information and communication technologies in election of United States, Great Britain, Brazil, or Argentina, based on the complaints to Cambridge Analytica, for example. The use of massive data in its processing based on algorithm allow us to know the political preference of citizens and also allows to influence their behavior. So its regulation by international institutions for its correct use is central. In military terms, the fourth industrial revolution represents dangers and opportunities as a new technologies can be used to improve weapons for war, as well as to provide greater internal and external security for states in a world characterized by going through process of hybrid and irregular wars, as we saw them in Syria or Libya. In psychological terms, the new information and communication technologies can be used to influence social behaviors from applications such as Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, which generate feelings of anxiety, hedonism, irrational consumerism, and individualism in population. They also generate an exaltation of instantaneity that do not allow to see long-term process and condition of reflective capacity. We have also seen social networks have promoted this stabilizing situation in third world nations, starting with the so-called Arab Springs, for example. The emergence of a new actor on the international scene, the transnational corporations, demands that we broaden our gaze on this process, which are no longer only promoted by the national states, but also by supranational private capital companies. However, not all of this process have negative consequences. The fourth industrial revolution can also serve humanity to increase its productive capacities, to build a more just and equal world, and to unite nations, people, and civilization in a community of shared destiny. In this framework, the ongoing technological transition and the new industrial revolution must be based on a vision that puts the people at the center and not the interest of the big capital. As in other moments in history, the vanguard of the technological transition is not in the global north or in the west, but in the emerging Asia Pacific, mainly in the People's Republic of China. We are going through a process of historical and spatial transition, a transition towards a new industrial revolution, qualitatively different, and that will configure a new social relations, a transition from the west to the east, and from the Atlantic to the Pacific, which will demand new ways of thinking about the world, and a transition from the global north to the global south, where emerging and developing countries find hope for a better world. The Chinese company Huawei, for example, is at the forefront of 5G development. Recent reports claim that more than 40% of 5G connectivity correspond to Huawei, but China is also developing 6G, which show us the speed of this transformation. In turn, 7 of the 10 smartphone manufacturers are Chinese companies, and if we add the 2 South Korean companies, 9 of the 10 larger smartphone manufacturers are located in the Asia Pacific. China has also fully deployed the Beidou geopositioner system, which is strategic for both civilian and military use, with the aim of breaking dependence on North American and European geopositioners. China also ranked in 2019 as the country with the highest patent application, and other companies like Alibaba, Tencent, Beidou are currently competing with the big North American technological companies. The massification of the global value chains and productive interdependence are novel characteristics that show that the ongoing technological transition has a large component of mutual dependence. Expression of this are the mutual dependence of semiconductors and microchips, as well as mineral and strategic resources such as rare earth and lithium. Currently, Latin America and the Caribbean has a great technological dependence on external actors. Historically, our countries have specialized in the production of raw material for export, relegating industrial, scientific, and technological development. Much of this has been the consequence of Latin America being a sphere of influence, first for Spain and Portugal, then for Great Britain, and finally for the United States. However, there have been integrationist processes that have initiated technological development that have been avant-garde worldwide in the 1940s and 1950s, and more recently in the first decade of 2000. The states of our region have tried to develop their own technological innovation based on an organization created by the Union of South American Nations, UNASUR, and the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, FLAUC, although these attempts have not made no progress yet. It is clear that Latin America and the Caribbean will not be able to insert itself into the ongoing technological transition without the support of emerging and developing countries. Only through a win-win vision, mutual respect, shared objectives, guided by the principles of solidarity, cooperation, and multilateralism, can Latin America and the Caribbean develop as a pole of scientific and technological power. The incorporation of 19 countries in the region to the Belt and Road Initiative, together with the strengthening of the China CELAC Forum, could mean great advances for the governments and people of our region. Through the BRI and together with the financing of multipolar institutions such as the ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Bank or the BRICS Development Bank, our continent can promote the development of science and technology promoted by the states, and depending on the needs of our peoples. However, Latin America has the mission of developing its own institution, recovering proposals such as the South Bank, for example, or regional scientific and technological centers coordinated by CELAC, with the aim to reducing its dependence for the United States in technological matters. Finally, in the context of real transformation at the global level, where the United States is losing its ability to influence Latin America and the Caribbean, accompanying the technological transition is a priority challenge. Thank you.